welcome back to the rootinest, tootinest bounty hunting series that you have ever seen. Last episode, we hunted down plenty of folks, including pirates and even one of their bigwigs by the name of Harmony. And that's why today's episode, we're going to begin by taking his corpse back down to the planet's surface to get our reward. This money is going to be absolutely crucial to us upgrading all of our weapons, armor, and even our ship. But it'll also be so much silver that we could throw it in a pile and roll around in it if we wanted to. Upon touching down in the region, we thought that this might actually be a pretty ample place to set up shop just for a little while as a temporary camp or something. First order of business though is going to be loading up that sorry ass dead pirate onto our jet bike and taking him off to get our warrant reward. Thankfully, it wouldn't take us very long at all to arrive at the Junkers settlement, the ones who were paying out the reward for his deceased corpse. And in the meantime, while Orzo was traveling to get their reward money, we would have Legs begin digging into this calcified junk pile to find any type of useful items such as plasteel chunks, steel chunks, plasma cartridges, you name it, we could probably find it here in the trash. Some odd hours later, Orzo would finally return home with all 10,000 pieces of our reward silver and then immediately begin helping Legs do a bit of mining with the calcified junk and trash, but also with some steel as well. We're going to try to begin collecting plenty of resources so that we can go about making proper additions onto our ship and upgrades. Plasteel is a pretty hot commodity when it comes to upgrading ships like this, so we're also going to build a smelter and dig all the plasteel chunks out of this calcified trash that we can. That way, well, we can smelt it and have it ready for the ship. However, since it seems like we're going to be here for quite some time to go about doing this, to set up a proper little camp, we also would begin cutting down plenty of cacti and trees in the area for wood. We're going to use this wood to set up some very simple wooden shelters out here in the desert to keep the elements off of our backs, even though our backs are quite well armored, but we're also going to be using it to build some proper storage shelves for all of our money and any of our weapons and anything else that doesn't fit in the ship at this moment. The problem is most of what we have right now that won't fit onto the ship is our money, and I know what you're thinking, it's probably not a good idea to keep our money outside lying around like this, and you might be right. It would seem that some raiders thought the exact same thing and are now here to try to kill us and also steal it. It would appear to be a Gerald Hanai bandit, an Imperial veteran who has turned bandit, and their construction mechanoid. Legs would immediately rush into his mech and come out to help Orzo fight off the incoming threat. Since we're slightly outnumbered, I think that this will help us even the odds just a little bit, eh? We began with a couple of rocket barrages at the filthy Imperial bandit, before trying to rip the CPU straight out of their mechanoid with our bare mechanical hands. However, a teeny tiny problem arose as we were battling in the mech. The battery got dangerously low and it was about to run out of power, which would have left us stranded out there being shot at, so Legs had to ditch it for the time being. But our enemies were still laying down very heavy fire, bullets and blaster bolts whizzing by our heads. Orzo chucked down his bayoneted charge rifle so that Legs could grab it, and the two of them would have a range advantage on our enemies. We immediately rushed to a nearby deposit of calcified junk and trash to begin using its pillars of garbage as cover. After a bit of a brief firefight, we were victorious finally. Ah, you poor dumb fool. To think many years ago you and I would have been battle brothers fighting off the forces of darkness from the Empire. How the tables have turned. We just took two totally different paths, I suppose. Now normally we would just go ahead and finish off any bandits or pirates that had tried to kill us like this, but this particular Imperial veteran pirate actually had a bionic arm, which would be perfect to replace the one we lost last episode. So instead, I think I will try to begin tending to her wounds. We'll take her in and make her nice and comfy, and once she's finally healed up from all of her injuries, we may begin to try to remove it. In the meantime, we need to make this temporary house a true home by improving the flooring of our little makeshift prison cell, as well as improving our power production, which we currently don't have any of except from the ship, of course, and we would also go about making sure it was well defended with a proper high security fence. Not exactly the most well secured camp, but it'll do for now. We were also running dangerously low on food, to the point that we had actually accidentally fed the Imperial bandit one of her companions' corpses, which is pretty cruel in my opinion, so I immediately went out and began hunting hunting down some local wildlife. Not only because it wasn't right of us to feed her corpses, especially those of her fallen comrades, but also because we don't want to have to start doing the same. I think dromedary steaks are a much better alternative. After a few days though, once the bandit was finally healed from her little thrashing from us, we decided to go about removing her bionic arm, though this ended up failing, and we would end up trying a second time, which also ended up failing, unfortunately. Each failed attempt causing her much distress and much pain, I'm afraid. Well, because we're bounty hunters and not torturers, we decided to take her out on a little journey to some junkers and outlanders to see if anyone would pay a good little bounty for her head, since she is technically a bandit. Funny enough, the outlanders of the area were willing to pay just under 700 silver for her head, and they even had a bionic field arm. The field arm isn't exactly the same as a normal bionic arm, as it's mostly just used for farmers and people like that who are sowing and harvesting crops, but to be honest with you, it's better than nothing. Plus, it was cheaper than a normal bionic arm, even though we didn't find one to purchase, and regardless of its intended purpose as a farming bionic arm, it actually gives us a much higher manipulation than a normal arm, so a win-win. We could already see a massive difference in smelting plasteel and other duties that we were currently doing around our little camp. Now, if only we could find a bionic leg to replace our lost leg, we could probably move around a lot faster grabbing these chunks to smelt them. But after many days of smelting and mining and deconstructing, we finally had enough resources to go about making some proper additions onto our ship. Completely expanding our front section, even adding in 2 bedrooms, one for each of our little crew members here, our bounty hunters, as they haven't even had their own bedrooms on the ship this entire time and have been sleeping in the control room. We would also add in some additional space for storage. This way, our hangar bay here is mostly solely going to be for our vehicles and our mech suit. Although that's a lie, because we're also going to be storing things in there as well, and by the time it was all said and done, we finally had our expansion of the ship done, making it look a bit more phallic. A large portion of our new storage room was going to include a mech hangar bay though, that way we could actually charge our mech back up to full capacity. Now this does take up a lot of power, but you'll also notice on the sides that we also have plenty more solar panels sticking out of the ship as well, so we should be good. Now it was time for us to take down our temporary camp and begin hauling in all of the useful resources that we want to continue taking with us on our journey, such as all of our money, of course. And with that, we can finally return to our home in the heavens orbiting the planet before we begin hunting more targets. All that hard work on the surface, though, I think we've earned ourselves something of a nap, wouldn't you say, Legs, old buddy, old pal? Ah, yes, from up here, the world was our oyster, our playground, and most importantly, ours for the taking. Our little piggy bank, if you will. Ah, yes, and I think that I've spotted our very next deposit. It looks like this fella is wanted for embezzlement. Ah, yes, I'm sure with armor like that, he's been embezzling quite a bit. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that we'll be able to take him dead, and we'll have to take him alive. Set phasers for stun, Legs. This won't be as fun as we'd hoped. They said we had to take the target alive for the reward, but his companion here, well... As for the target, Legs would try to jump up right next to him with the old combat knife and start poking him in the ribs a little bit, as Legs would come up behind him and start blasting him in the back of the head with a non-lethal blast, I hope. Eventually though, we would end up taking him alive, though he was badly bruised and beaten, as I'm sure you could imagine. Orzo would rush him off on the jetbike to try and collect our warrant before he may have ended up bleeding to death, who knows. But in the meantime, Legs would actually pick up his interesting weapon here. This, my friends, is a plasma cannon. As an ex-grunt in the Covenant forces, of course Legs is quite familiar with plasma tech, and thus he knew exactly how to go about using it. Yes, indeed, I think that this will come in quite handy. Our next target was wanted for larceny, and though we would end up making a good bit money more on him if we were to take him alive, that's not exactly our style now, is it? Especially not when testing out our new cannon. we may have found our new favorite weapon for these hunts. I do notice, however, that many of the larger warrants seem to have already been fulfilled by us, and we're really dealing with the small potatoes now. So we began building a radio terminal inside the ship so that we could communicate with some traders as well as the orbital traders hub, and we can actually begin selling off many different items that we're collecting from these hunts, as well as the junk piles that we've been mining out. This would also allow us to go about purchasing a few things that we needed, such as a bionic leg. We would also end up getting ourselves a bit of glitter world medicine. That way we could ensure that the surgery is up to par and that we don't have any complications. We equipped Orzo's room into a simple surgery room with the operating table and everything that we saved on the surface, and the surgery went off without a hitch, just as we had hoped. It would seem that I'm almost whole again. I'm still missing my right eye, but I'm sure we'll come across a nice bionic eye or something in the very near future, perhaps even a recon eye, which is a bit better for our occupation. Now that we can move around and manipulate items much better, we decided to make a few more upgrades to the ship. I noticed that we have a severe lack of heating and cooling, as well as weapons. These small uranium slug turrets won't be able to do much of anything, to be honest, but they're better than no defenses at all. And then after that, when checking warrants in the system, we ended up coming across the Holy Grail, yet another torturous marauder pirate. Going by the name of Smoke, he was actually worth 15,000 silver, 5,000 more than his companion Harmony, who we had taken in last episode. Just what we had been hoping for. This hunt was going to be a little bit different though, it would seem, as Smoke wasn't just hiding out in some torturous marauder base on the planet, he had actually landed a ship nearby. Just off the shoreline, a very large ship with a very large entourage of dangerous and deadly pirates. Backing them up were reinforcements of gigantic mechanoids, with large cannons built into their exoframes, and one even wielding a large Gauss cannon. It would appear that we're going to have our work cut out for us. If I had to guess, I would say that they've landed here looking for some type of shipment delivery that they could take back into orbit and thus out of this system. Of course, we don't plan on letting them make it that far though. We ended up landing our ship just a few clicks to the east away from where they've landed their own. No doubt they've already detected us in the nearby area, but I highly doubt that they would leave their post and their ship unattended to try and attack us, which means that we have the upper hand, the element of surprise. Landing our ship too close to theirs would surely be a death sentence for it, if not for it and us, as our weapons surely cannot compare to their own, and thus why we've decided to come into the region via on foot and or jet bike and mech. The idea here is going to be for Orzo to sneak around the western side of this area on the bike, although it'd be quite loud. I don't think that they'll suspect much, and he's going to try to come up around the side of their ship. In the meantime, Legs in his mech suit would sneak up around a small hill near the ship and then begin attacking the pirates. Not only to try and kill as many as we possibly could, of course, but because we've learned our lesson from the last attack against these pirates. Attacking them head on the entire time is a fool's game, and that's why Orzo is going to infiltrate their ship, killing any pirate security he sees along the way, of course. Since Legs is outside taking on the main group all by himself, they'll never be able to get any help on the inside. Meaning, of course, that Orzo will essentially have free roam around the ship once he finishes off the security forces, which also means that he'll make it into the control room and will be able to use the ship's defenses against the crew. Fighting fire with fire, as they say. This would severely weaken their mechanoid forces, as well as killing many of the pirate entourage themselves, giving Legs in his mech suit a real advantage against them, making finishing off what was left of their forces and their mechanical minions nothing but child's play. Ah, Smoke, you're just the same as the rest of them, devious, sly, and even dangerous, but what you lack is resolve. You lack honor, and for that, I must sentence you to death. Trust me, the world is a better place without you. Well, now that there are no more pirates, I suppose the question should be posed, what do we do with a pirate vessel, especially one of this size? There's no salvage yard on this planet that isn't under control of the Federation that would be willing to take it for some silver, so I suppose we could keep it. Legs in his mech suit would begin making the journey back on foot to our ship where he would actually pilot it and take it back into orbit around the planet where it rightfully belongs. While Orzo, commandeering the pirate vessel, would end up doing the same, rendezvousing in orbit with our own ship. Based on the size and design of this pirate vessel, if I had to guess, I would say that it's some type of modified trade ship. It's still quite unknown to us as to what they planned on doing with it here on the planet, but I think it would be great for possibly hauling around large amounts of cargo as well as possible bounty targets. It could be exactly what we need to take our business to the intergalactic scale, if you catch my drift. You see, this bad mamma jamma has its very own warp drive, meaning that we're not going to be regulated to doing our bounty hunting business in this solar system, or realistically even this star system anymore. Speaking of which, we do currently still have the business of taking Smoke's decomposing corpse down to the surface for our reward, which we would quickly end up doing, and the Junkers, being the arch nemesis of the torturous marauders in this system, would pay a handsome fortune, as they promised. But as it currently stands, it doesn't look like we have many warrants posted in the system for this planet, so perhaps moving on is going to be a good idea. But maybe in the meantime, we give it some time to populate with some possible bounties, and we begin working on our ships instead. We actually began cutting in half our ship that we've created and adding it onto the front of this pirate vessel. The reason being, we only have 2 crewmates, Legs and myself, and to be honest with you, it would be extremely impractical if we had 2 separate ships, especially given the size difference between the 2 of them, so in my opinion it only made sense for us to add ours onto this one. So, utilizing what resources we currently had in storage, as well as the resources that we ended up getting from deconstructing our vessel, we would end up beefing it up a little bit as well. That way we can ensure if we got into combat in space, it wouldn't immediately be cut in half by lasers or plasma weapons. And with that, for the time being, our bounty hunting vessel is complete, although it does still need a name, which I'm sure you fine folks wouldn't mind helping me out with, would you? If you'd like to leave some name suggestions in the comment section down below, I would very much appreciate it. In the previous episode, I had said that we were finally going pro. We were going to be in the big leagues of bounty hunting when we built our very first ship, but now I think that that statement truly is, well, true. This ship will be able to hold up to several bounty targets all at the same time, which will make us a filthy fortune, but I think that we may need some more crew. We also need a quick, easy, and efficient way to go about interacting with the planet's surface, so we've actually created a shuttle that can enter and exit atmosphere to return home. For example, loading up over 20,000 pieces of silver into it and having it go down to do a bit of trading. We're going to be on the lookout for any bounty hunters like ourselves that may want to join our ranks. I feel that it's only common sense that we would have a crew aboard our ship that has similar interests and goals in mind. We would end up coming across an Imperial veteran who used to be a Janissary who goes by the name of Lester. No doubt he has the experience that we're looking for, though he seems to be a hired gun, which means that for 6,203 silver, he would join our crew. We forked over the cash, accepted, and we took him aboard in our shuttle and began heading back to the old mothership. Upon our return, you'll also notice that not only did we hire Lester, but we also purchased many different types of resources like steel, plasteel components, advanced components, yada yada yada, some armor for Lester, and many other things. Of course though, just because we paid him doesn't mean we could trust him, so Legs and Orzo would begin something of an interrogation and a conversation with him to entrust that they could, well, trust him. Orzo, being a veteran of the old empire himself, they had a lot in common, but Orzo knows better than to just trust people based on similar experience, you could say. I mean, think of all the times in this series alone that another Imperial has tried to kill us. However, trust is indeed something that is earned through different types of means, such as working together on improving the ship with all the new resources that we've acquired. We're going to begin creating some more weapons, such as lasers, and also some large coolant tanks to help us ensure that our shields don't burst immediately after getting shot at, of course. And I hope that all these new defenses and improvements are well worth it, because we essentially spent all of our bounty money on it. However, of course, you could consider this just investing in our business, right? You have to spend a little bit of capital to make a little bit of capital as well, of course. Improving the ship not only ensures our survival that much more so, but it also ensures that we'll be able to continue hunting down bounties without issue. We would also end up removing the black and red pirate paint from our ship to avoid preemptive conflicts. That way, governments of planets and star systems don't try to shoot us down out of orbit and destroy us just solely based on how we look. However, we did feel that the red paint was still pretty fitting given our occupation, and thus we decided to leave it. But with all that work completed, it is time for us to begin making money once more. We have a target that is wanted for extortion, and thus because of this, there is no reward if we kill them, which is a bit boring, but nevertheless, it is money. Spending this time together has had us begin to trust Lester quite a bit, so we would allow him to take over flight of the ship while we went down to the planet's surface to take care of our new bounty target. We plan on flying down in the cover of night. As you can see, our little shuttle is a bit of a darker red, so they'd never even see us coming. They too appear to be some type of Imperial remnants, though I can't be sure what the target's rank and or noble title might have been, if any at all, although it does seem that they do have a Janissary personal guard along with him. Orzo, using his jump pack, would leap into action and began attempting to stab the target as legs killed the guard. The target's plasma cleaver did a good bit of damage to us, but luckily after a few shots we managed to take them down before they could get another hit or two in with it. And with that, it was time for us to begin tending to his wounds to ensure that he doesn't bleed to death before we get our money's worth out of his little ass. His personal guard, however, yeah. We would finally return home with all of our winnings, as well as a few weapons and other things that we got from their camp, such as some meals and spacer med packs, and also, most importantly, a very interesting item known as a Resurrector Mech Serum. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what this item does, if one of us were to die, the other could technically and theoretically use this to pull us back from the icy gripping hands of death himself into the living world. Though, based on the planetary system, it doesn't look like we're going to be facing death or the possibility of death anytime soon, as it doesn't seem like we have any interesting warrants that would actually be paying any decent silver. Unless we wanted to hunt down some wild animals for scraps of silver, but where's the justice? Where's the fun in that? The lack of warrants, accompanied with the fact that it seems that the organization known as Void is taking a massive foothold in our home planet here and is fighting the Federation, who will most likely soon collapse. All this to say that I think that our job here at home is done, and that maybe we should use our warp drive to discover some other star systems in the galaxy where our business can flourish and thrive. Of course though, to go about doing so, we will need to activate the ship's built-in AI computer core, perhaps even giving it a form gel form, that way it feels more natural to us. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Charlene, the brains of our ship. At first, we were a little bit worried since this was a pirate vessel, but Charlene had confirmed our suspicions, stating that it was originally a transport ship for traders, and thus of course he harbors no ill will towards us. After explaining to Charlene that we are the ones who have been hunting down the pirates for a little bit of cash and the rewards that they offer for them, he seemed pretty content to stay along with us for the ride. But before we go into hyperspace, we do need to jump into our cryo sleep pods, at least for the initial jump, otherwise our internal organs may be pulled into the outside, which is obviously not good. And with that, my friends, we shall bid farewell to our home planet one last final time. The ether and the abyss of space calls to us, it beckons for us, and thus we must answer its call. Into new horizons we go. Odd. I wonder what that could be. This poor chap's body is completely shredded. Well, he doesn't look like a Federation soldier or a Void associate, so I guess we could use our serum on him.